Alright, theory and theology, what is going on? Today we are going to talk about this movie, Noah, kind of comparing to the Bible story. I don't really know what to say. I have notes, but it's like, whoa. So the film was directed by Darren Aronofsky. I'm a big fan of his. My favorite movie he ever made was Pi, one of my favorite movies ever. Requiem for a Dream. I think Whale is one of the newer ones. So let's talk about this story. So we have Noah. We all know the basics, right? That there were these beings that came and had children with human women, and those beings that were born from them, had some kind of ability. I don't know if it was some kind of learning ability or they were taught to do some type of, build either with metals or make weapons or technology or what it was, but there was something that happened that made it so there were so many evil people on the face of the planet that God was like, look, Noah, you and your family are the only ones who are, worth sparing. You, your immediate family, and your sons' wives are the only ones being spared. And then everyone else is getting wiped out by this flood. And Noah, you're to build this ark. Here are the measurements. Now, then he's supposed to build the ark. And, when the rain comes, there's this 40 days and 40 nights. And, it took a while for the water to recede. They send out a dove a couple times, or a bird, and it basically comes back with nothing, and then eventually it comes back with a branch of a certain type of tree. I can't remember if it was all over what, but that signified that it, I guess, found land. If you read the Bible story itself, it's not all that I don't even understand. Like, there were all these like wars and battles and all kinds of stuff going on in the movie. And those big rock things that were called the Watchers. Now that comes from the Book of Enoch, which we're not gonna dive into because I didn't do my homework on it, and I'm not too comfortable talking directly about it. But the Watchers in the Book of Enoch, that's more of an explanation of what are these nephilim. It talks more about that. So the Book of Enoch, I believe the Ethiopian Orthodox Church has the Book of Enoch, the Book of, is it Baruch? I don't know if it's Jubilees. There's some books in the Old Testament. In the Ethiopian Orthodox Bible that, the Protestant and Catholic churches didn't like canonize necessarily. Most Protestant churches don't have the Apocrypha in there. And is the Book of Enoch even in the Apocrypha? Because one of my friends told me that she was looking for it. Is the Book of Enoch in the Apocrypha? Because I remember sending her a copy of the Book of Enoch for one of her birthdays or something. It says Enoch is in there. And why was it removed? The Book of Enoch was excluded from both the formal canon of the Tanakh and the Septuagint, and therefore also from the writings known today as the Deuterocanon. Anyways, let's get back to Noah. We can go down multiple rabbit holes at any other time. So some key points that I kind of took out were this whole storyline around the wife, these wives, and the whole thing about, Ham isn't gonna have a wife, but Japheth gets a wife, and then they found this girl along the side while they were running away, and she becomes Japheth's wife. It's that I don't know where that came from. I've never heard that story in my life. And the part about the wives, I had to go back and look that up. So anything that I put with kind of capital letters, and I'll try to post these notes if it's not too many. Anything I put with just complete caps, that is, meaning that it's what I was looking up in the Bible. So the wives are mentioned in Genesis 6:18. They mention before the flood that God said, hey, Noah, you and your wife and your sons and their wives are going to go into the ark. And then it mentions that Noah and his wife and his sons and their wives went into the ark. And then it mentions at the end of the flood that Noah and his wife and his sons and their wives left the ark. I don't know if Ham had his wife or had his son first. We'll get back to this wife thing, but Methuselah, I don't think there was any biblical proof of Methuselah drowning in the flood. I mean, Methuselah is known for being the man who lived the longest on the earth. And when you read in the Bible, it's when it says how old these people are, it's Methuselah was 900 something years old. Noah died at I think it was 650. These guys were old people. And some people speculate, I don't know if the Bible says it or if it's a speculation that people live for less of an amount of time after the flood because of just having a longer lifespan. You can get into a whole lot. Now, I don't know if you still were hitting puberty at the same age. Did you have to wait till 60 to hit puberty? It didn't seem like these people were getting married. I mean, they were having kids when they were 100 something years old. So I don't really know how the maturity rate was. I don't know. That part to me is not very clear. So Elah, who ends up being Japheth's wife in this movie, I should have said spoiler alert. I'm gonna mess up this movie. If you haven't watched the movie, you should probably watch the movie. Elah having twin daughters. I don't even see an Elah in there. But she had twin daughters, and it was kind of assuming, okay, if she has the twin daughters, then now Ham and Shem, once they mature, they could potentially have wives. And that, in this story line in the movie, was a problem, because Noah was believing that everybody needed to die, that they were going to be the last ones. They were going to be spared from the flood, but the last ones surviving. And then nobody would survive after the flood. Like, they would be the last living family. But I don't know. I mean, it's like, technically, if Illa could have had kids, then she could have been impregnated by all the sons. I mean, that isn't really how that works, but I mean, if you're the last fertile woman on the planet, it's either you do it and have multiple lineages with the 3 sons, or everybody else dies, right? Like, I don't understand. I mean, I understand if there's like, okay, husband, wife, and they're keeping it strict, but it's like, I don't know. I don't know how it worked. Because during those times, you know, people had, you know, in olden days, you know, maybe after this period, but olden days, you know, kings and different people. Like, it wasn't really unknown for people to have multiple wives, but I don't see any stories where in, you know, Judeo-Christian kind of belief systems that people had multiple husbands, but there are cultures where women might have multiple husbands. I don't know if the Bible speaks against it. I just don't see any examples of it. But when it came to things like, you know, a man could, you know, have children with his slave or servant. I think a slave. I think in the book of Exodus it talks about that. After the 10 Commandments, there's a part that talks about slaves, and, you know, the slave after 7 years or whatever it is, like, the slave can either be freed and the kids have to stay, or if the slave loves the kids and loves the master, the slave can decide to stay permanently and not be released and stay with the children and the family. But if the slave has to leave, the kids belong to, I think if it's a male slave, the kids and the wife belong to the male, and the master of the slave can have kids with the female slave. Like in the story of Abram and Sarai, Sarai had a maidservant, and Abram impregnated her with Issachar, or Ishmael, and so there is some argument, you know, technically in those days Ishmael would have been the legitimate son, which is where the argument for Islam comes in, from the Muslim lineage coming out of Ishmael. They believe he's the firstborn legitimate son. And I believe, I don't know, that if I'm not misunderstanding that, there might be some accuracy to how that was viewed. Now, I don't know if a maidservant is the same thing as a slave, if they have the same rights. I don't really know the details. But I do think, technically, if the crazy Noah in this movie, because he was kind of losing it, if the crazy killer Noah in this movie were to have had his way and would have killed those twin daughters that Elah had, I don't know if there's, I mean, I guess that would have been considered adultery, a woman having multiple husbands. But I don't really know. I mean, if it's to repopulate the earth, I mean, when we look at the story of Adam and Eve, I mean, something's up, right? I mean, I don't know. Like, that story is very confusing. And I'm not saying I promote incest or any kind of thing like that, but I don't know. When you think about it, if it's like those weird scenarios where people are like, if you're stranded on an island kind of thing, it's like, if you needed to repopulate, there's only certain ways that places get repopulated. Like, people have to start having kids, right? So, whatever that looks like. But technically, if Illa wasn't barren like they thought she was, she would have been able to have kids. When I was watching the movie, because I'd watched it when it first came out, but I hadn't watched it in years, and I was thinking like, oh, whoa, is Illa present with Ham? Is she pregnant with Ham's baby? Like, that would have been like some kind of interesting. Oh, she had a baby with the wrong son because she didn't know she could get pregnant. Like, Japheth's girl's been sleeping with Ham. The Watchers versus the Nephilim and them turning to stone and all that. I don't really know. I don't know. I got nothing to say about how they looked that way. I think they looked cool. They almost reminded me of the Transformers for some reason. I don't know. Like, I don't know if there's anything in any of those types of books that talks about them other than them coming to Earth. Now, the Adventist view with, I don't know if the Adventist view is the same thing as the Book of Enoch, but there is this view in the book called The Great Controversy. If you like Adventist writings, you can get them for free. There's an app called Ellen G. White Writings. I think it's called EGW Writings or something like that. And you can get the app, and it has all her writings for free. Steps to Christ, Desire of Ages, all that kind of stuff. And in The Great Controversy, there's this whole section that talks about the battle in heaven where Lucifer, takes his crowd of angels and is banished because they choose not to follow God, and they're banished. I believe they're banished to Earth, and I don't know if that's the same as, how the serpent got in the garden, or how, Satan is, I don't know. The whole idea with, like, Lucifer and Satan and all these things, like, are they even the same thing? And then Lucifer being an angel and all these other things, like, I don't really know. I don't know what to say about it. And I don't know if that's the same thing. Like, I guess the Nephilim, I don't know. That whole part, I don't really know what to say about it. So I put deconstructing the visuals of Noah, retelling the Genesis creation story. Okay, so that was an interesting point. Like, I guess after or during the flood, while they were stuck in the ark, Noah starts telling the story of creation. And how, if we've talked about, flat earth theories, and I'm not saying, okay, the earth isn't a globe, it's definitely flat or whatever, but if you're deconstructing the globe theory and looking at the flat earth theory, or at least considering that where the Bible talks about a firmament, some kind of a dome over the earth, and the visuals of the creation story don't reflect there being a dome or a firmament or anything along those lines. then Noah had this wrong prediction that Japheth was going to be the last man. Not maybe it was Shem. Wait, was Japheth the youngest son? Am I messing this up? Shem, Ham, and Japheth. So Shem was the oldest then, right? Or was Japheth the oldest? I don't know. I'm mixing them up. I might be mixing up the names. I apologize. But either way, yeah, I think because Ham was the one that was picking the flowers. So either way, whichever one I'm talking about, I can't get the sons right. So I mixed up this whole thing with all the sons with the wrong names. Sorry about that. But anyways, Noah having the prediction that the youngest son will be the last man. I mean, that's inaccurate, obviously, because we're all here. So if the flood happened the way that they said, then how'd the rest of us get here, you know? So I don't really know what to say about that. Like, I don't think Noah ever made a prediction or some kind of prophecy in the Old Testament that, I mean, according to Noah's killer, you know, his you know, murderous father vibes that he has going on in this movie where he's just trying to kill everybody, which I don't know, if he's supposed to be so righteous, I don't understand why he believes he needs to kill so many people. Or he starts thinking of himself as more evil. I don't even really know. So I put that there was no scene of Ham and Shem of Ham uncovering the father's nakedness, or Shem and Japheth walking backwards and covering Noah up after he'd been drunk, after he planted vineyards and was drinking of the wine and got drunk and was nude, and I guess Ham saw, and, you know, Shem and Japheth took a blanket or something and walked backwards to cover it. There was that scene. It was towards the end, after the flood, where they were settled, and you know, so I'm gonna put that there was a scene. And basically, Noah didn't state the curse, but he kind of gave this, like, look to Ham as if, like, you messed up kind of thing. And that's the scene where Ham takes that snake skin that's in a little pouch and he throws it over towards Noah and kind of walks off and, like, goes his own way. Now, according to the, we'll get into the Bible part, but according to the Bible, you know, at that part, Ham's son, Canaan, gets cursed. So Ham's son, Canaan, gets cursed, and that lineage gets cursed. We'll talk more about that. And then Tubal-Cain, I don't know his role. Early in the movie, you see him killing Lamech which is the father of Noah, and Noah witnesses this. The part about them mentioning getting strength from animals, that other people ate animals, but Noah's family didn't eat animals. I guess they were like vegetarians or something. I don't know. I just don't know if they were some kind of vegetarians. I don't think that's something I've ever heard about. I did hear some theories about rain, that rain never fully existed before the flood, that there was a dew on the plants in the mornings, and that's how they got watered, and that water would spring up from the earth, but there was, no water from above. Now this is theory that I was taught from like the Adventist world. I don't even know if it's based in any type of writings anywhere. I don't know where it actually comes from. I just remember being taught this over and over again. And, in the creation story, there is the mention of the waters below the earth and the waters above the earth with the firmament. Now, do with that what you may. I don't really know how all of that unfolds. Yeah, I really don't know. Okay, so Tubal-Cain in the movie, he gets let into the ark. And that never happened. He in the Bible story, nobody got let into the ark. But he kind of broke into the ark and was hidden. Let me see. Let me look at the names of these. Let me look up the names, because I think I screwed up the names. So let's see. So yeah, Ham was played by Logan Lerman. Obviously, Noah by Russell Crowe. Illa by Emma Watson. Methuselah by Anthony Hopkins. Naama was Noah's wife, Jennifer Connelly. Ray Winstone played Tubal-Cain. Shem was played by Douglas Booth and Gavin Gasilengo. And Japheth. Okay, this isn't helping because the pictures don't look right. I need pictures of them when they're older. Mean uncle. Let me see. If I look at IMDb, alright, let's see. Sorry, wow, this movie's from 2014? You gotta be kidding me. I didn't know it was that old. So I need like actual pictures of what they look like in the movie, because I can't really tell by just looking at them. Anyways, this app is so glitchy. I can't find it. don't know. I can't really find it. Young Shem, young Ham. I mean, they kind of look the same to me, in all honesty. Anyways. So the middle son. I'm pretty sure it was Ham. Anyways, if my notes are wrong, apologies, because I'm all confused now. Something else I found interesting was, okay, I guess so they got the serpent skin passed down to them from, Adam from the garden. And the way they wrapped that serpent skin kind of around, now they did it kind of backwards. Wait, did they? They did it kind of backwards, but it almost looked like the way that Jewish people wrap tefillin. Almost. But they did it kind of backwards, because usually you start up with the bicep part, then you do the forearm part. Well, you start with the bicep part, then you do the head adjustment, and then you finish up the forearm part. It goes to your hand and then on your finger. I think they were doing it from the finger onto the hand, up the forearm, but it didn't really go as high as, like, past the elbow. But that was interesting, because I was like, did anybody else catch that? Because even the way it looked, like the way they wrapped it around, like the one finger. Some people do 2 fingers. I think it's usually supposed to be like 2 middle fingers or 1 middle finger. I don't know if I've ever seen anyone wrap it around their index finger, maybe. I don't know. But I've seen more of people wrap it around their middle fingers, the both ring and middle, or 1. Maybe people do index, I don't really know. But somewhere around the middle, and then they wrap it around the hand. Well, that's the end. So it's like they go bicep, then the head adjustment, then the forearm, wrap it around the hand, wrap it around the finger, then tie the excess, or like wrap the excess around the hand or wrist area, and then it's kind of tucking the last part, so it kind of just stays put. But that was interesting. And then Lamech and Noah using it as a birthright. Okay, so when we get past the flood, let's get past the flood, and then we talk about the Bible. So this isn't in the movie, but I just thought it was interesting, because I was like, okay, let me get back to this, the Parshah reading of Noah, Noach, N-O-A-C-H, or Noach. So the post-flood biblical information, it says Shem's age, he was 100 years old 2 years after the flood. So yeah, he was in the ark when he was like age 98 or so. There was some information about languages. So post-flood, so there's this post-flood, during the section that talks about the genealogy, with the oldest son of Japheth's descendants. Genesis 10:5 mentions languages with that oldest son. So that was interesting. I had a question about, was Ham the first to have a son? Because Ham's son Canaan, and Noah's curse to Canaan for Ham seeing Noah's nakedness. I don't know the timeline of that, because it happened after the flood. because Noah made a vineyard after the flood. But when was Ham's son born? When was Canaan born? Like, what was his age order? And so I don't really know that. And then Nimrod is interesting because that's a name that I don't know how it became used as a name of like an idiot. Maybe it was like an oaf, like a big, athletic giant oaf, kind of like stupid. But I don't understand where we now call Nimrod. In the Bible it states that Nimrod's kingdom was Babylon, and that means that Babylon and others. He had others too. So Nimrod was the son of Cush, and Cush was one of Ham's many sons. So Ham didn't only have Canaan, Ham also had Cush. Cush had Nimrod, and Nimrod had a kingdom of Babylon. So Babylon is like modern day Iraq. And so, the thing that kind of interests me is kind of like looking at modern history too, like modern times too, and seeing where some of these places are. Like, I'm not saying that all this, makes perfect sense. And like, if you read the Bible, it's like, oh, it's all there. But if you, like, when I was thinking about, like, when I think about Canaan, it's like, the Canaanites were always kind of having issues with the Israelites, and basically, spoiler alert, at the end of the Torah, the Israelites take over into the land of Canaan, the land flowing with milk and honey. They take over, right? But it's kind of weird because it's like Canaanites come from Ham's lineage from Noah, but it's like all these people spread out from all that time all the way to the end where we have I guess Joshua, before Joshua kind of starts getting more in charge, and before the death of Moses, or right before the death of Moses, and then Moses wasn't able to enter the promised land, which was Canaan. And so I don't understand how it becomes the promised land, if Canaan was cursed early on, but I guess maybe the lineage was cursed, but the land was built up. But you start seeing these key names like Babylon back here after the flood. Babylon is throughout the whole Bible. You see Babylon all over the Bible, Old and New Testament. Babylon is there. A lot of times it's associated with evil. If you think of it, where it's actually located is modern day Iraq. So a lot of these places are in Iraq, in that area of the Middle East. So Earth, I think my notes should say being divided, not begin. Earth being divided. So Genesis 10:25 with the mention of Shem's line and the name Peleg. I don't think I'm pronouncing that accurately, but the name Peleg is from Shem's lineage, meaning something about division. And then the story of the Tower of Babel comes after that, Genesis 11:1. And the Jewish commentary in Rashi explains, stating that Eber, or Eber, I don't know how to pronounce that, Eber was potentially a prophet for predicting the name Peleg as division of languages. And so, yeah, since he predicted that, because I don't know, I mean, I don't really know the order at which these things took place, because during the genealogy, a lot of these notes start coming up, like who Nimrod was and who Peleg was, and Canaan, and all these kind of things. But it's like, what's the order in which this happened? Like, I think it gets revealed as the Bible kind of keeps unfolding. So I guess maybe Peleg was named before the Tower of Babel, because it mentions that Peleg was named regarding the division of languages. And that was something that I just didn't really note before when I've read about these stories and about the lineages of the sons of Noah, that there was anything about languages post-flood. Like, it doesn't make sense that, you know, it talks about, you know, Shem's lineage and the people kind of branched off. When it talks about Shem's descendants, and it says how they kind of branched off according to their languages. And it's like, well, if this one guy's having sons, or whatever, the sons that are mentioned, and then they're all speaking different languages, like, that doesn't make any sense. You know, but they kind of mention it earlier, almost as if it was happening earlier, and then later on they bring up this chapter 11 of the Tower of Babel. So did it happen at the Tower of Babel that these different branches of the genealogy spoke different languages then, after the tower, and then all went and dispersed to their own separate places? Or did it happen like, was it in another way? Like, was it not the Tower of Babel, and they just somehow knew different languages and started living and populating different areas according to, like, what language they spoke? I mean, none of it, I don't think one way makes more sense than the other. Like, the story of the Tower of Babel is really weird. I never fully understood it. I never understood, you know, and I'll end on that part, but with the story of the Tower of Babel, it's not very clear why God decided to end that. It's kind of like, it says, you know, in Genesis 11, now the entire earth was of one language and uniform words. I'm reading it from Chabad.org, because it has the Rashi commentary with it. And it says, so this is coming from east in the land of Shinar. And let's see. It said in verse 3, "Come, let us make bricks and fire them thoroughly." And so they were able to do that. And then in 4, it says, "Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the heavens, and let us make ourselves a name, lest we be scattered upon the face of the entire earth." And then it says in verse 5, and the Lord descended to see the city and the tower that the sons of man had built. And then it's in 6, it says, and the Lord said, lo, they are one people, and they all have one language, and this is what they have commenced to do. Now, will it not be withheld from them all that they have planned to do? Rashi says that will it not be withheld part says this is a question. The word, my bad Hebrew, yabatzer, the word yabatzer means withholding, as is Aramaic translation itamena. I don't know if that's how you say it in Aramaic. And similar to Psalm 76:13, he will withhold Yavatzor, the spirit of princes. That didn't explain anything. So withholding. And then, I don't know, verse 7, come let us descend and confuse their language so that one will not understand the language of his companion. And the Lord scattered them from there upon the face of the entire earth, and they ceased building the city. So I don't know. Then it goes into Shem's lineage of Arpachshad, who was born 2 years after the flood, when Shem was 100 years old. So it doesn't really clearly state what the problem was. God wanted them to be, I guess, withheld. What's the wording? Withheld. Will it not be withheld from them all that they have planned to do? Like, they won't have any limitations? Is that what that means? But anyways, the reason why I'm mentioning anything about the Tower of Babel is because when it comes to the lineages, where it's talking about the genealogy with Shem, it does mention languages with Peleg, that his name means division regarding languages, and it does talk about the lineages of the descendants kind of dispersing to live among their similar language people. I don't know what to do with any of this. It's interesting though. It's interesting to watch a movie. So before I watched the movie of Noah, I listened to what was it that I was listening to? I listened to an audio version of the story of Noah. Just the story of Noah and the ark and all that. It was very simple. Very matter of fact, like this happened, that happened. The movie, of course, is entertainment purposes only, and there's a lot in there that isn't in the Bible. There's a lot in there that isn't in other books. I think the biggest thing that struck me was the whole issue about, the son that didn't have the wife, and Noah trying to kill the twin baby girls, and like that kind of stuff. Like, they just really made it into something weird. I didn't expect it to like follow the Bible. I'm actually glad it didn't, but it's just kind of interesting watching. I've noticed I've talked about this before. First of all, it's hard to find any kind of Bible movie these days. Like, especially around Easter, you used to always see like a whole bunch of movies on like Netflix or whatever on TV. They'd be playing a lot of Bible movies and stuff. You don't really see that anymore. And now you kind of see, you don't see that. I don't know what you would call it, but you don't see that. You don't see a bunch of people talking much about, you know, about the Bible stories. And when they do make these movies, they're like really weird. Like, I'm not saying they need to be biblical, but it's like there's stuff in there that's like, okay, where'd this come from? You know, like according to, you know, how the story ended in the movie, you know, only one son has one wife with two daughters. And then Noah has his sons and his wife. And the other sons don't have anybody. And one of them leaves and goes and just does his own thing. He's pissed off at Noah because he didn't let him have a wife. And, you know, Tubal-Cain was kind of going to help him to become a man because he was very concerned about not having his rite of passage fulfilled by having a woman for himself. And Tubal-Cain, I guess his message was, you become a man by killing versus you become a man by giving, by, you know, being fruitful and multiplying. And that is another thing that, you know, Noah said to his sons after the flood was, be fruitful and multiply. Like, if they didn't have wives, like, who the heck was he talking to? The wives were there. They already had wives, and the wives went onto the ark. Now, I don't know the age ranges, but if Shem was 100 when he had a Parshah 2 years after the flood, that means he was 98 years old inside the ark. Now, he did not look 98 years old, but again, like I was saying, like, I don't know how old they were supposed to be. Because wasn't Noah like 300 and something? Like, I don't even know. Like, and Methuselah dies, you know, at 900 something. Like, Methuselah never comes onto the ark, and he dies at like 900 something years old. Not by the flood. In the Bible, he doesn't get wiped out by the flood. In the Bible, he just dies. So I don't know. Like, it's a confusing. It's kind of confusing to even try to compare the two. I don't know what prompted me to do it. It just sounded like the most interesting thing I could do yesterday. So it's kind of what I did last night. But yeah, that whole lineage with Ham, because if the Bible talks clearly about Ham having at least one son named Canaan, I mean, Noah mentions that Canaan is cursed. And I don't know if Canaan was alive on the ark. Like, how old was Canaan? I don't really know when he was born. Like, I don't know when all these other sons that were mentioned as that would be technically Noah's grandsons, like, when were they born? It only really talks about Arpachshad. And then there's mention of Canaan, meaning that I feel like maybe Canaan was already there, like he had already been born. But these men had wives. You know, it doesn't talk about them getting married after the flood. It talks about that they had wives that came on the ark. God told Noah to tell his sons to bring their wives onto the ark. Now, it didn't say the wives and children, it said the wives. So maybe they didn't have any children before that. And so I don't know. It just makes me wonder, you know, why aren't these movies kind of being made as often, even if they're like not based in the Bible? But why aren't they being made as often? And when they are being made, why are they so far from the Bible? Like, I'm not saying it needs to be like the old boring ones where it's just like Moses walking around, or like Jesus walking around, or like whoever just like walking around being boring with a staff in the desert and their sandals and robes and all that. But, you know, I think it's fine if they make it into an action movie. Why not? There's more to challenge about it. There's more to watch, and you look and you're just like, what is going on? It kind of almost made me want to go back and read it, you know, like I read it, I listened to the audio before, and then I went back after the movie and just read that whole part up until the Tower of Babel. And, you know, it's like, that was really interesting. You know, seeing all the stuff that wasn't, I mean, there was plenty other stuff that I wanted to dive into, like about the stuff about the nephilim and the watchers and stuff from these other books, but I was like, I didn't want to read everything last night. I was doing this at like 8 p.m. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely interesting. I enjoy getting into it. If I watch more movies, I'll record more about them. Sorry, I messed up the names. I'm going to post the notes as I have them and a link to the trailer of the Noah movie from YouTube. But yeah, I don't really know what else to say. That's all I really had in my notes, but it was interesting. I mean, there's more to compare biblically, but just that like a very superficial glance at things that were just kind of different. And I mean, kind of seeing the wickedness of the people, how they were like trading children that they kidnapped to pay for meat, and things like that. Like, it's just, and just seeing like the popular names that come out of the lineages, like Sodom and Gomorrah, and different, like Shinar, and different kind of places that you see that kind of come up, that you're like, oh, like, okay, like you can kind of piece more of the story together. It's kind of more interesting after reading it, and then you're like, oh, like I actually want to know these lineages and all their sons and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, that name Nimrod is kind of weird. I guess Nimrod was a giant or a very skilled something. I don't know. Like, there's something about Nimrod. But yeah, there's always more questions than answers, but I found it interesting. I had fun. And we're almost at the hour, so we'll keep it at that.